Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, a very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond, Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, what is the civil society perspective on the public finance bill? How will it affect the budget process, and how revenues from oil and other sources will be managed and utilized? Civil society organizations are expressing concern about a bill now before Parliament titled the Public Finance Bill 2012, which they say has far-reaching implications on the budget process, the management of oil revenues, and the power of Parliament to carry out its oversight functions. The bill, among other things, seeks to provide for fiscal and macro management and also establish the Petroleum Holding Fund, besides regulating how the money will be managed. It also seeks to repeal the Budget Act and the Public Finance and Accountability Act of 2003, which is the law under which accounting officers are held accountable on how they utilize funds appropriated by Parliament. After thorough scrutiny of this bill, civil society organizations under their umbrella organization, the Civil Society Budget Action Group, or CSBAG, have come up with a position paper in which they forward their concerns about the bill as they seek to advise Parliament and the Executive about what needs to be done. This bill, which was read for the first time, is still stuck in the Committee of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and members of Parliament are required to scrutinize it on top of listening to views from stakeholders involved in the budget process. Tonight we hear the views of civil society to try and establish what proposals they are putting forward and why they think this bill, if not amended, may have serious implications on how public funds are managed in the country. Our guest tonight, Mr. Julius Mukunda. He's a Senior Programs Director at Forward, that's the Forum for Women in Democracy. Yeah, he's also coordinator of the Civil Society Budget Action Group. We're also joined by Mr. Julius Kapwepwe Mishambi, Director of Programs at the Uganda Tech Network. You're most welcome, Mr. Kapwepwe.
Thank you, and good evening, listeners.
Well, there are two Juliuses. Mr. Mukunda, what are your views on the finance bill?
What is the finance bill? Because I think, Edmond, the first thing is also that the public is not aware about this finance bill. Because there are so many laws in this country that are going on, we make so many laws. But what is the finance bill? And basically is that, in a layman's language, this is a bill that is trying to, that the government wants to put in place on how it will collect money and how it will spend money. Because in between, of course, there is managing the economy. So, but basically in layman's language, how government is going to collect money, from where, by what means, and the rest, but also how government is going to start spending the money. And I could tell you that to me and others is that this bill is the most important law in this country, second to the constitution of this country. The constitution is supreme, but this law is going to be the second, simply because it's going to determine how me and you, our standard of living is going to be affected, because we depend on how government raises money and how government spends money. And therefore, government brought up this bill in a view of working out a number of things. They have three reasons as to why they have brought this into bill. Number one is that there are defects in the existing laws. But up to now, we are still want to find out which defects are there in the existing laws. And that's one of our major concerns, because those defects in the existing laws have not been mentioned. But it mentions other two areas, the East African integration and also the coming up of these oil revenues as the key reasons as to why a new bill, a new law on public finance management is concerned. So that's number one. So what does this new bill bring? I will talk about one of them, and probably my colleague also could talk about another. One is that this law brings up what we call the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility. In essence, is that it is the law, the bill is proposing that for every new government to come into power, it must come up with its fiscal objectives, what it intends to achieve in terms of how are you going to collect money, how are you going to spend it, what kind of economic outputs are you going to achieve at the end of your term. It's a 5-year plan. so that all the money, the annual budget, the national budget framework papers and everything are key in ensuring that we achieve those physical objectives. And that this charter, they call it a charter, is going to be approved by Parliament. This is a very good practice. It is done in the UK and even in other countries. That when a new government comes to power, you set up your physical objectives, which we have been lacking. Now, the only challenge we have with this now are two things. One is that they are going to bring this charter within 1 month when the Parliament has been sworn in. Edmond, me and you will know that our Parliament settles in after 6 months. A new Parliament. Others are still looking for where the offices are. Others, they don't even know how Kampala is, where offices in Kampala are. So in 1 month, it is going to be very difficult for new members of Parliament to debate the charter of fiscal responsibility. Two is that deviation, that after the Parliament has approved the key objectives, fiscal objectives of government, the minister may deviate from these policy objectives without the approval of Parliament. And again is that if Parliament is the one that approves that you are going to achieve these particular objectives, why then don't you go back to the same Parliament to say, because of regions A and B, I'm unable to achieve these objectives, I would like now to deviate. So that Parliament can be able to debate why you are deviating. And it increases transparency, it increases accountability, but because Parliament is a representation of the people of Uganda, we feel that it must have a say if you are going to deviate from these particular objectives. So that's one key area in this bill, which is good, but also which we want the government to strengthen, that in terms of deviation, you come back to Parliament.
Yes. But briefly before I go to that, you say it gives the minister powers to deviate. It's already happening. They can spend up to 3%, without going back to Parliament.
Yes, and this is what we are talking about entirely in this bill, that the minister is becoming a super minister. They are overburdening
the minister.
The finance minister here. That they are overburdening the minister with so much responsibilities, and that simply because we are human beings, we can err. There is a likelihood that the minister is going to begin to err in making decisions, and therefore it is important that even when you have decided you are going to deviate, seek parliamentary approval, and that's what we are looking for. And once that is done, it makes this fiscal charter one of the strongest points in this particular bill.
Mr. Kapwepwe, from the Uganda Dead Network's perspective, what do you see this bill bringing to us?
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator. To add on what Julius Mukunda has said, I would quickly wish to add that as civil society organizations under the CSBAG, we welcome the bill in some areas. That, for instance, looking at the Budget Act and the Public Finance and Accountability Act, that we need some additional necessary and relevant legislation that matches the times. For instance, in view of the pending oil revenues, is welcome. That the Public Finance Bill is making suggestion that the two major acts, particularly the Budget Act of 2001 and the Public and Finance and Accountability Act of 2003, should be repealed. And looking through the current bill, we do not see the components of those two bills hitherto being reflected in the bill is a matter of concern. In the first place, if we looked at the Budget Act, for instance, it gives authority and avenues through which Parliament can strengthen its participation in scrutinizing the budget proposals, which often are brought by the executive. That under that act, there is a provision for a parliamentary budget office, particularly to support members of Parliament in juggling through the budget proposals at the level of proposed revenues and also proposed spending areas. Certainly, we acknowledge that for members of not all members of Parliament Parliament may necessarily be conversant with the budgeting process. They are from a diverse background. Some are medical doctors, for instance. Some are teachers, and others are 6 equivalent, and others are PhDs, others in different areas. But you have a certain office designated and provided for under the Budget Act to support the members of Parliament to jump through the budgeting process is something that we cannot lose sight of. The bill seems to be losing sight of that. There is an aspect in the bill, of course I may not go into the very specific questions because the listeners out there, perhaps many of them through our consultations experience has so far shown us that they have not even seen the public finance bill in its current form. So I am not going to necessarily mention section 14 as opposed to 13, but I will highlight the major areas. The other aspect we are concerned about is where under the Constitution currently and then Public Finance and Accountability Act, there is a provision that the executive through a relevant minister can undertake supplementary spending of up to 3% of the total national budget.
That's the current law.
Yes. In the proposed bill, in the public finance bill, it is proposed that this should be expanded to 10%.
From 3% to 10%?
Yes. And we are looking at 10%, for instance, against the background that, as the President has rightly always said, that the budget envelope in this country has been increasing. Right now we are at about 11 trillion shillings. It means that with the revenue with the oil revenues expected and gas revenues expected, this could expand fourfold or fivefold. We would be talking about, for instance, 49 trillion.
Well, but the money is already going into the budget.
The 10% of that kind of size of the budget of 49 trillion shillings, for instance, that you just let it pass at the homes of the given minister or the executive without the prior approval, prior scrutiny and approval of Parliament, the people's representative institution, we think is unwelcome. And so those are some of the areas we have with the bill, and we think that it is high time that Ugandans know about this, but also get more involved in understanding the implication of the bill at the level of individuals and our respective individual households, but also on its net and in its current form, unfortunately, quite adverse effect on the national economy.
Let's try to understand the spirit of this bill. Right now, a minister can spend up to 3%.
Yes.
And now the oil is coming, somebody is saying, let's expand that to 10%.
Yes.
Opening the money to the, well, we've had a lot of corruption lately.
Yes, we already have had very many scandals in this country that are corruption related, but also that involve quite high profile individuals, both politicians and traditional civil servants in this country. That you expand that kind of opportunity 10 to 10% is expanding 10 times the opportunity of abuse. And that Ugandans must understand it and look
So
at.
instead of tightening, because the thieves are at the door,
Yes.
we're opening the door wider, we're throwing away the padlocks. Julius Mukunda, talk to us about the budget office. The Parliament Budget Office gives some background. It's an exemplary factor of this Parliament.
Yes.
It's seen as an innovation, a unique innovation by the Ugandan legislature,
Yeah.
and it's an example to the Commonwealth. What is happening to the budget office in this bill?
I think I have, in 2001, when I started actually work on budget advocacy, it was one of the things that we found ourselves the challenge by then was that the budget process was closed. It was on the, if you remember, the minister would come and make a speech and everybody would hold prices.
You don't sell on the day of the budget.
No, you don't
Because
sell
of
the
those
day.
prices
Yes.
and beer prices and so
So I remember then members of parliament led by Honorable Winnie Byanyima and Isaac Musumba and the lady from the East African Community, Deputy Secretary General, former
Yes.
Beatrice Chiraso.
Chiraso, yeah.
Yes.
Honorable Chiraso.
They came up with a private members bill, the Budget Act. And one of the things they did was to open up the budget process, to increase participation. I remember that was the time in 2001 that we were able to begin to receive budget information from government in time. It gave us space to engage Parliament, because by then we know the indicative figures. They brought the issue about indicative figures, that Parliament said, before you read the budget, first give us the draft estimates. Yes, first give us a plan of what you want to spend on, so that we can make an input, rather than at the end surprising us. So to do that, they found that actually that they don't have enough capacity as members of Parliament to read through these thick and thin documents. You know, you find a document of 1,000 pages, cross print, aggregated figures. They couldn't get spreadsheets, so they couldn't understand that one. And they said, no, I think we need experts in our office as Parliament. Not that somebody should come and say we need an office, no, but an office created by an act. And they created a parliamentary budget office to be staffed by experts in financial management, budget analysis, economists, even lawyers, by the way.
Not necessarily MPs.
Not necessarily MPs. Technical people headed by a director who is very conversed with economic and macroeconomic issues. And they put it there, and these guys, over and over again, they were able to get these documents, they were able to read them, analyze them, get information to members of Parliament in a way that each and every member of Parliament can understand, even if you are a lawyer, a doctor, whatever. So it gave MPs now information to be able to engage government effectively. But they also said we need a budget committee specifically to look at the government resources, how government money is coming and how money is getting out. Apart from, and they said this committee must be a committee of an act, made out of an act, and they made a parliamentary budget committee. Now, when they did this, it is a best practice, it is a benchmark in the whole of this world. Everybody wants to know how the budget works. They come to Uganda to look at the budget office and also to look at the budget committee. At the budget committee has got its members, but all heads, all chairpersons of other committees are ex-officials. They come and bring their budget of their different sectors and present it to the budget committee, and the budget committee harmonizes everything. So, when now this bill repeals the Budget Act,
they're removing the budget office.
And in this bill, they completely remove the budget office and the budget committee.
Suspect, isn't it?
I find to me...
What does that tell us about the spirit of this bill? What are they thinking as they bring this?
I think for me, Edmond, I just be very blank on this one, is that at this time when you are in a position, you are
planning the oil to come.
You are planning the oil to come. I don't think you would need a very strong parliament to begin giving you headache. Because
it's a bad thing. The strong parliament.
I think
asking too many questions.
I think if you have people who are going to start asking too many questions, you might have problems in terms of the way you want things to run. But I think when these important institutions that help even citizens, even civil society organizations that help us in understanding the budget process and how we can effectively engage it, and it is now missing this bill, we find that the spirit of this bill is suspect.
The president said recently he wants his party caucus to have a more direct say in the budgeting process in Parliament. What does that tell us?
But Edmond, I don't know why. Because they're the ones who make the budget. Because if you look at the committee that is in charge of making the budget preparation, they're the same people. It is the president, the vice president, the prime minister, and other members. Even the chairperson of the budget committee is part of this NLM caucus committee. So I don't know what the difference they are going to make in terms of this budget process. But nevertheless, I think it's, for me, it's a welcoming idea that they should get involved in understanding how resources actually are being done. It will give us an opportunity as a sort of organization to have another. You see, we have been concentrating on Parliament that it has the power to make resources.
Yes.
Now it has come in light that actually they don't have the power. The power lies in the caucus, in the parliamentary.
Which is a part of Parliament.
Which is a part of Parliament. So for us, we're going to now concentrate our efforts with the caucus to influence the caucus than the Parliament. But it is absurd.
What's wrong with that?
It's absurd that an institution, a Parliament that we elected as people's representative, is now turned into a small caucus, that things are being discussed out, not in a formal way, and that now we have a Parliament that is not going to bite.
Julius, let's talk about the oil revenues. How well prepared are we to manage oil money? Some of it has already started coming.
Yeah, thank you very much. Of course, that is a very fundamental question, and I think it raises perhaps more questions than answers. I think at the onset I should say, perhaps for purposes of our clarity for our listeners, that the Public Finance Bill is proposing establishment of what is called a petroleum fund. So that is part of the perhaps part of the preparation.
Yes.
The petroleum fund has got two components. One is called a revenue kind of holding account, and while the other one is an investment account.
Yes.
But when funds come in from oil, then they should be put on this kind of receiving fund. Receiving account.
Fund.
Yes, outside the consolidated fund.
Yes. In Bank of Uganda.
Well, somewhere that we would wish to believe that it is in Bank of Uganda.
Yes.
The investment account makes highlight on how the oil revenues can be invested in the interest of Ugandans. Now, in that particular to that extent, in terms of preparation, we could say that's a positive move. Of course, our only challenge is, for instance, in here be more specific, Section 53 of the Public Finance Bill in its current form, basically which talks about the collection and deposit of those petroleum revenues onto the holding account. But there is in subsection 4 where it says that where government accepts petroleum instead of cash, that the value of petroleum shall be calculated in an international and freely convertible currency at the rate pertaining on the day the petroleum is to be received. Of course, this itself raises a challenge. Looking at the petroleum market globally,
yes,
the prices change even within 1 hour.
Yes.
You already there is that high volatility of oil prices. So when you tell us that at the rate pertaining on the day, what time is that? Is that at midday? Is that at
normally there's a window, there's a day rate.
Yes, but in its current form the bill does not provide for that. It says in the day. If I was a person, for instance, yes, I don't say we are coming from a background of having reason for suspicion. If when you look through the Auditor General's reports, when those that have closely followed the reports of the Public Accounts Committees of Parliament and Public Account Committee reports of the local governments, we have reason to be suspicious, particularly where monies are involved. So, in the case of the day, if I was somebody in charge of this and I chose to receive this or do the deal at a certain time too, I can make, as they done and say, a killing. I can make a profit out of this. And yes, and this is an area that is prone to corruption.
How should they do it?
This is a very, yes, we think that it should be studied further so that there is better clarity and specificity on how and when. Of course, the other unfortunate thing about this kind of clause is that can the value of oil be low until it is actually sold? So when we talk about the value that we accept petroleum instead of cash, how have you determined that actually the price of this particular oil volume at this material time is this much? There is a lot of gray, but if
oil in real terms, there's a problem whether it's priced.
Yes, but what its value? Because it says where you accept petroleum instead of cash until you sell. Because of the volatility of oil, you may not exactly know what price premium you will sell at.
All right,
so
this
it's
is Spectrum.
an area prone to corruption.
This is Spectrum on radio. We'll go for a break. We'll be back to stay tuned.
Uganda Communications Commission is currently conducting nationwide mandatory SIM card registration. Register your SIM card in a few easy steps. Visit your telecom operator's customer care center or any other designated registration center and provide your phone number, a copy of a valid ID or any other valid ID with accompanying photographs such as a passport, driver's permit, voter's card, or a letter from your LC. Information on your physical address or residence will also be required. SIM card registration registration protects mobile phone users from incidences of fraud, incitement, terrorism, and hate messages, among others. Please note that SIM card registration is mandatory, and those who fail to register risk having their SIM cards deactivated. All information shall remain confidential. Let's make communication safe. Register your SIM card today.
So I'm chilling at home with my crew. The boys are waiting to watch the game on the telly, but the chicks want to go to the beach. So how do we play it? A glance across the room. Eye contact is made. A plan is hatched. Pete will get some sand. Lots of it. Jeff will take care of the deco, Tim the entertainment, and I the clubs. And so we bring the beach to the apartment. If we can't go to the beach, we bring the beach to us. It's just how we do.
It's not about where you're at. It's the difference you bring. Get a fresh take on things. Club is brewed longer for easier drinking. Brewed slower for great taste. Club, tastefully different. Not for sale to persons under the age of 18.
Excuse me, what is this 300 shillings on my bill for?
That is for the tinted candles, madam.
And this 100 shillings?
That is for the air conditioning.
And this 200 shillings?
For the blue walls, ma'am.
I can't believe this!
Why pay for what you don't use or ask for? That's why we at Standard Chartered are introducing the Easy Go account, the first current account of its kind that gives you complete control of your banking charges. For more details, visit a Standard Chartered branch or call 0414 340077.
Would you like to leave me a tip, please?
Hello, Auntie PC, my way. Actually, I'm at the beach having fun. You know, I have free calls. I'm basically calling everybody. But don't get afraid, Auntie PC. I'm going to get back to you. Oh, answer rendezvous. Yeah, my way. Actually, I'm calling everybody. Don't get off. I will get back to you. Oh, Muzei, I've just forgotten what I wanted to tell you, but remain on right. As soon as I remember, I'll get back to you. Yeah, my way. MTN,
Enjoy free MTN weekend calls. Load a total of 2,000 shillings or more between Monday and Friday. Dial *188# to activate free MTN weekend calls.
MTN, everywhere you go.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum tonight. What is the civil society perspective on the public finance bill? How will it affect the budget process? And how revenues from oil and other resources will be managed and utilized? Our guests tonight, Mr. Julius Mukunda, Senior Program Director at Forward, that's the Forum for Women in Democracy, and Coordinator of the Civil Society Budget Action Group. We're also joined by Mr. Julius Kapwepwe, Mishambi, Director of Programs at the Uganda Dead Network. You will be able to call in as well and contribute to this discussion. Before we come to Mr. Mukunda, Mr. Kapwepwe, it looks like the contingency fund will only be 3.5% and not 10%. Why do you say it's 10%?
Yeah, you can respond. Let me just respond to that. Yeah, the contingency fund. Yes. This time around, we have not been having a contingency fund.
In the past, we've not had a contingency fund. But the bill introduces a contingency.
It's now operational. Actually, it is operationalizing it because it was in the constitution, but it has not been done. And the bill is proposing that it should be 3.5% of the appropriated annual budget of government for the previous year.
Where does the 10% come from?
Now, the 10% comes from that the accountant or the head of a vote, or the head of the vote, may request the minister for a supplementary expenditure of up to 10%. Up to 10%.
So 10% is the supplementary
of a particular vote for the head of a vote. The head of a vote can ask for at least 10%. Now, what it means, what we're arguing that it is likely to be 10% is that when you allow a sector that it has up to 10%, if all sectors decide
to ask for it, the budget goes on the rails.
Then now it goes up. What we are proposing was that let it also still remain within the 3.5% of the contingency fund, so that people know that they are still within.
You think that's what could affect the economy?
Yes. Now, in terms of that affect the economy, is that you see when you debate a budget and pass it, when you debate a budget and pass it, and you decide now to begin supplementary spending all the time, you are weakening the whole of the budget process. In terms of predictability, it becomes difficult for any investor to predict that actually this is going to happen, because anytime you're going to change it.
No, but the argument is this plan, the contingency fund, basically is trying to remove those supplementary budgets, which are not very much liked. So when you have them, then you don't need a supplementary budget in the end.
I mean, you can also argue that, I think, because but the contingency fund, actually, the most important thing why you wanted the contingency fund was to deal with our natural disasters. In fact, it is a very welcoming move in this bill that the contingency fund, that 80% of the contingency fund is specifically for natural resources, Bududa, and maybe the nodding disease, specifically for natural disasters, and the remaining percent is only to be used for the supplementary expenditures.
Julius Kapwepwe, talk to us about, you say that the budget 49 trillion is going to jump from 10 trillion to 11 trillion to 49 trillion. How does it do that jump?
Yeah, I was giving a scenario, because, for instance, if you looked at...
Let's get the perspective here. Not all the oil money is going into the consolidated fund. In other words, it won't be on the cash account. Some of it will be invested. It will be in an NRF, a National Resource Fund, in the central bank.
Yeah. We are looking at, if you look through the government literature, the current government literature, there is a high inclination of doing planning based on the anticipated revenues from oil and gas. So whether that at that material time a certain sum is invested elsewhere, offshore or elsewhere, and how much of it remains is directly goes into the budget to support implementation. The fact is that there is high expectation on the anticipated revenues. And for instance, if we looked at oil,
yes,
about US dollars 250 billion in form of revenues.
250?
Yes, billion.
No, let's get it clearly. We don't expect more than roughly $25 billion from oil in 10 years.
Yeah, over that period.
35,
yes,
in 10 years.
Yes, over that period.
Yes.
So you can clearly see that even if you did the simple calculation, that the budget will be supported handsomely by the oil revenues. So that means that from the current 11, it could go to any figure. The budget could increase threefold.
It's a supposition.
It could increase fourfold. No.
It's a supposition.
Yeah.
How ideally, of course, it's not such a big thing when you look at the figures. 25 billion shillings, we would still be poorer than Bill Gates. One man. And after 10 years, he has it already in the bank account. Let's go to something else that makes gives us a how should these monies be spent in actual fact? The oil monies when they come in.
Yeah, we are looking at, of course, as I said earlier, there is the proposed investment aspect, which is called the investment under the petroleum fund that will be established, the investment account. That talks about how those kinds of funds can be invested.
Yes.
It can, of course, it is also interesting, and that is.
Let's try to look at figures. Maybe that will make it easier. Over the consolidated fund, how much money should come to? Let's assume we're getting $3 billion a year.
Yeah.
How much should be put into the budget? How much should be put away in an investment?
Yeah, the bill under perhaps this will shed some light. The bill in section 55 says that now, regardless of the amount that comes, that for avoidance of doubt, petroleum revenue shall be used for financing of infrastructure and development projects of government, and not recurrent expenditure of government.
Development
yes,
of the budget.
Yes, on the development aspect of the budget. Yes. Of course, the underlying motivation of this proposal is that we are looking at the future generation,
yes,
which is absolutely fine. The only question is, how about the present generation? What happened? What becomes of it?
Well, some of it would have gone into the current budget, salaries for the
yes, but the bill is very clear on recurrent expenditure.
What does it say?
It does not entertain recurrent expenditure of government.
No money should be taken from oil to
for salaries, for
even that should be a distortion, because if you invest in infrastructure, you're technically expanding the economy, improving efficiencies, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
The current side requires some more money as well.
Yes, it is. I can give an example. If you are talking about, for for instance, the health sector in this country.
Yes.
If you put
have more nurses,
if you put up buildings,
salaries,
it is something welcome. That's a development expenditure. The nurse to do the operation, to do the running in that health unit, that, for instance, is considered under recurrent. The nurse who needs to go for immunization outreach in the communities there, and the money for lunch and that is recurrent. And here it is clearly stated that the oil revenues should not go to that area. Already we've been having problems in this country where the recurrent even expenditure alone is insufficient. Therefore, you have an ambulance, but the ambulance, because it lacks petrol, it has worn out tires,
is packed.
It is literally useless in that kind of health center, and therefore, in terms of service delivery, it is literally useless.
So there's a disconnect.
We think that there should be an opportunity for Parliament, for instance, as the people's representatives, to have a discussion and a scrutiny of some of the proposals. We are against a predetermined position that this money should strictly go to infrastructure. What is wrong, for instance, if we did a balance of some sort?
You can't afford that, can you? Can you? Hospital, which is a capital expense, you're going to need doctors to run it.
Somebody who needs school fees to go to school today needs that money now.
Most likely it will have to be resolved. I don't see how it
Yes, that is
but you see, Edmond, the question is here. Yes, for tomorrow. What about today's needs? Well, we don't have enough teachers, we don't have enough doctors, students need loans. You're not going to tell
Let's look at it realistically. Yes. Most likely that is going to be corrected because it's an anomaly. You cannot build hospitals and not have doctors money.
Definitely.
We assume it's going to go. But let's talk about something else. Former Minister for Finance, Ezra Suma, doctor, says at some stage, he said in a public forum, he said he's opposed to a lot of money being spent on the roads and all this infrastructure because it goes back to the big companies in the West.
I think the point that we were trying to make here, even today actually it was made in the it was mentioned in the budget conference. One is that we don't have contractors with the capacity to manage some of these contracts, and therefore you will depend on Chinese contractors, Indian contractors, Malaysian contractors who will take all this money outside. And therefore, if we're going to invest heavily in this infrastructure, this money again is going to be taken abroad. So what is the problem of us building capacity of our local entrepreneurship so that they can be able to manage these big contracts? Districts are suffering because all these contractors in the districts, they start a contract today, tomorrow they have dried up because they cannot finance it and finish it. So why can't this oil money help us to build the capacity of our local entrepreneurs and the contractors so that they are able to do that? And for me, there's one question by the way I wanted to put across.
Yes.
If this is our money, this oil is for every citizen, why don't we vote on how we want to spend this money?
Yes.
Because I think the case, what I understand in Alaska, they called upon everybody to vote on how their money is supposed to be done, and they created a fund. Everybody has shares in that fund. Why don't we have a referendum and they ask us, how do you want your money to be spent? Why should very few people sit down?
Let's first do this.
No, I think this question is a matter of national importance. Every Ugandan should be asked. In my view, surely, I should be asked to say, where do you want your money to be? The first thing I would think, do you know what? Please create a company where I have a share, so that wherever you invest the money at the end of the year, you give me a dividend and I take it home.
Let's try to get more simple about this. You invest in infrastructure, it grows the economy, then you collect more taxes. How does that not flow?
There is we
do not have
collect
more revenues, then you pay salaries.
We do not have a problem with investment in infrastructure. In fact, the incentives that infrastructure development can bring to this country, can bring to this economy, are known. Those are not debatable. The challenge is when, by law, under the current bill, therefore subsequently, if it passed into law in its current form, it means that by law, you have predetermined where that money should be put.
Yes.
Now, the notion of investing in infrastructure is to look at mainly long-term development. But the question is, how about the needs of today? before I can live long
The
time.
argument is when you invest in infrastructure, the
that
economy
is
grows
okay.
faster, and then you collect more money, and then you
That
pay
is
yourself.
also, that is also,
Why should we should spend money like that? Julius, currently we have not stopped government from investing in infrastructure, have we? Do we require a law that please make sure you spend on infrastructure? The challenge here we are saying is that you cannot determine. In fact, one of the issues that we have raised is that you are actually removing powers from Parliament to determine how resources are supposed to be allocated by that particular time. Because the needs of then and now are different. So if you determine it into your law that please infrastructure, what if by
setting
then,
it in concrete?
Yes, this law is going to stay forever. What if by then we no longer need infrastructure? What is going to happen? Are we going to keep the money? I give you an example of Karangara.
Yes.
When they would send money to Karangara to construct roads, the government parties construct roads. Karangara never had roads. They would bring back money to the center because they never had roads. Because that was not a priority to them. But so predetermining means two things. One is that what are the needs of today? Two is that you are reducing the powers of Parliament to determine resource allocation.
Let's hear from the listeners. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. Our number 0414 348 111 0312 260 390 0312 2613 90. When you call in, please tell us your name and where you are calling from. Yes, talk to us a little bit more about that. Normally, Julius Kapwepwe. Yeah, you say it's you don't think spending on infrastructure will expand the economy fast enough to grow the tax revenue base?
No, spending on infrastructure is not a problem. Our argument is that before you can achieve long-term development, you also need to take care of the current needs. Children who need to feed now cannot wait for an express highway, for instance, on the Entebbe Kampala road, that will through road toll over time earn an income out of that initial investment. The hospitals that need to run today, the police officers, if you looked at those police women, for instance, who went on strike
with their saucepans,
because perhaps there is little to cook at that material time, because perhaps the degree of medication back home is wanting, because perhaps their children are not at school. It's an issue to look at.
Yes, say your name. Good evening. Yes. Well, there's oil in Uganda, but experts say it will take about 6,000 years for it to get the quantities required for exploitation. Julius Kapwepwe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kenya. The bill provides that districts actually can determine, and through like where there particular exists cultural institutions, that certain sums out of oil revenues can go to that kind of an institution.
2.5%.
The challenge, the percentage is not indicated. Even there,
the bill.
Why that is a good move?
It's a proposal.
Yes, it's a proposal under the bill. Why that is a good move? The bill does not specify on who.
Another caller, Spectrum. Hello. Yes, ma'am. Your name? Come again? Yes, Lina. On how we have another caller, Spectrum. Hello. We've lost them. Yes, go on.
Okay, the question on how, for instance, the cultural institutions will benefit. The bill makes some proposals. It says the district will determine. Of course,
it's actually the sub-counties that give the kings money. The district, then sub-counties, the sub-counties decide.
The bill itself says it is the district. This doesn't say it is a sub-county. Of course, what does district mean in the case of Uganda? Does it mean the district council? Does it mean the RDC? Does it mean the BC? Does it mean the chief administrative office? It is imperative that in matters of law, for avoidance of doubt, you are as clearest as possible you can. It has to be determined who in the RDC or in the district should be responsible for that kind of. And again, to agree with Vivian, for instance, that if you have an agricultural bank in this country,
yes,
if you have a pensions fund in this country,
like
if you have a student scholarship scheme in this country, a certain mechanism designed to help us invest in some of those other areas. In fact, beyond expanding those other sectors, you are also expanding opportunities for prudent accountability of public resources. I can give a quick example. If you established an agricultural bank, you do not need necessarily the Ministry of Finance directly, except perhaps for the Auditor General's office, to go and manage the nitty-gritties of that kind of a fund. So a 50 billion or a 500 billion in that bank is already being taken care of through expectations of prudent financial management under the banking institutions in Uganda. If you have a pensions fund, an example I could take is like NSSF, but many other, for those people who have retired, for instance, and are living in destitute in this country, are we going to keep watching? If you have a pensions fund, for instance, that takes care of that category of people, which under Ministry of Gender government has been trying to do anyway, then already you're expanding opportunities for prudent accountability. It means that an institution like NSSF does not have to depend on
Hello, yes.
Let me say, tell Ambrose what it actually says. What it says, sharing of revenues from relatives. It says that the government shall retain 93% of the oil revenues, and the rest of the 7% shall be shared among the districts located within the petroleum exploration and production areas. 7% will be given to those districts, and so only those ones, and the rest will be paid by government. So any other person can be. So 90%. Whether the share is more or big, I think that's another debate. Because I remember the Nyoro King wanted was it 15% or something like that. So,
and the original plan, I think the draft of the finance bill was 2.5%. They've raised it to 7%.
7% for all the districts in the region to share it. But there's something which Kapwepwe said, and which we need to emphasize. One is that out of this money on the royalties, a district may, in consultation with the minister responsible for culture and local government,
give the king some cash,
grant a share of the royalties to the district to a cultural or a traditional institution.
So the cultural leader has to go and sit at a bench.
Yeah, and beg for it. But for us, we're saying, when we say district, will it be another DC, a DISO, a CAO? We need to be specific in this and say the district council. For example, we provide the district council, which is in charge of allocating resources within the district, should be the one mentioned here. Otherwise, when you leave it as a district, any leader of the district can decide to share that.
Well, the original draft, I looked at the original, it actually spoke about the sub-count. They've improved it.
No, of course, the version of the, perhaps for the purposes of listeners, that the version of the bill keeps changing as it gets new input and new insights and new realities. And also to perhaps to add to what Bukenya Ambrose has said, you do not have to be satisfied. This is a bill. You can only come forward and make your own proposals when there is still an opportunity.
And this is the opportunity.
And let's talk about corruption. Does it address corruption at any level, or it assumes we're clean men and women?
No. I think this is another area, Edmond, we need to improve on in this bill. The bill on section 74 talks about offences under the bill. There are so many offences. If you have not properly provided information in this bill, if you make a loss, you are responsible for making a loss. A number of offences. But two things. One is that you are liable to when we converted the currency points, they are talking about 25. They are talking about the currency points. When we converted the currency points, they are talking about
currency point is 20,000.
When we convert it when we convert the currency points of the bill, it comes to 100 millions as a maximum punishment you can get if abrogate or you are not in tandem with this bill. 100 millions or a jail term not more than 4 years.
Yes.
Edmond, me and you will know that the levels and the scales of our corruption is not in millions now; it's in billions.
We're a developed growing country.
So it does not scare me to dip my hand into the public
100
funds.
million is petty cash.
Is petty cash. So we would feel that here we would increase the currency point to equivalent to at least $1 billion and life imprisonment.
Well, but someone will bear that in mind and say we raise it.
Fine, yeah. Because if we throw somebody in prison for life, then I think it would be scare so many people in terms of trying to dip their hands into government.
Mr. Kapwepwe,